Council. And as our keynote speaker today, we have Professor Cherry Brown, Akita International University, Japan. We also have among us the deans and chairpersons of distinguished departments and the director of centers, Ms. Sriraja Munira. Just a little note to everyone, because a very urgent meeting is going on, which is the strategic meeting, and our Vice Chancellor and Pro-Vice Chancellor, sir, might join us a bit late, but they will join us very soon. So we are going to go straight into our main session, where our keynote speaker is going to speak to us. So with that note, I'm going to begin now because it's time to listen to our main speaker of the event. After she speaks, our Honorable Vice Chancellor and Pro-Vice Chancellor, sir, will also give us their appreciation and blessings to this event. So, Professor Cherry Brown lives in Japan and she currently teaches at Akita International University. It is an English medium liberal arts university in the north of Japan. Professor Brown is the co-winner of the inaugural New Zealand International Excellence in Tertiary Teaching Award, and she has published TESOL resource books, online language teaching and learning resource materials, as well as a wide range of academic articles and book chapters for professional publications. She regularly presents teacher development workshops across Asia through the Teachers Helping Teachers organization, or THT organization. With THT, she has also visited Bangladesh on several occasions to provide teacher training workshops hosted by BELTA, that is, the Bangladesh English Language Teachers Association. Her current project, in conjunction with BELTA members and supporters, is entitled Stories About Ourselves. This project involves working with teachers from Bangladesh to create and provide free online graded reading resources in English with a strong Bangladeshi cultural focus. So, it is a great honor and privilege for us to have such a scholar with us to speak on our webinar today. Dear audience, you can send me your questions for Professor Brown using our Zoom chat box. Because there are time constraints and there might be connectivity issues, we will have a very short question-answer session with the questions you send me in the chat box. Now, may I please request our main speaker of the webinar, Professor Cherry Brown, to please deliver her talk for this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tanzia, for your wonderful introduction. It didn't sound like me at all. And I want to say a special thanks to Green University and especially to your Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Fakir, and your special guest, the Pro-Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Razak, and also greetings to Dr. Bartholomew. And a special thanks to Sriraja Munira as well for putting together this event and for participating in this event. And a special thank you to everyone who has joined us this afternoon for taking the time to be here. I understand that I will be speaking to a mixture of students and teachers. So I have prepared my talk with that in mind. And I'm going to show you a PowerPoint slideshow as I speak. But if you are interested in obtaining a copy of this, you can contact Sriraja Munira, who also has a copy. There is some hopefully useful information in here that you may wish to record in some way. Of course, you can take screenshots or photographs as well, so please feel very welcome to do that. So let me begin. I will share my screen and minimize the window. Okay, so let's go back. So our topic for today is my word vocabulary learning principles, strategies, activities, and personal stories. And I'd like to talk about three things in particular today. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is what we should be learning and why we should be learning it when we are learning vocabulary in another language. And as you are learning English, this applies, of course, to learning English, but it could equally apply to other languages we are learning as well. The second thing I'd like to talk to you about is vocabulary learning strategies or ways of learning and some activities to support what we are trying to do when we learn vocabulary. And then thirdly, I want to kind of push the boundaries a little and talk a little about what it means to build an identity in another language and to reinforce our vocabulary knowledge, to strengthen our vocabulary knowledge through the use of personal stories. And that's a little bit different perhaps from what you may have thought about in the past when you have been studying vocabulary. So I hope that last one is of great interest to you. So here is someone who is telling stories and using words. And of course, we all know that we cannot tell stories without words. So let's go to the first point then, some foundational principles, some basic things we need to think about when we're learning words. And the first question we need to ask ourselves is, what should I learn? English has thousands and thousands of words. So where do we start? In fact, depending on how you define word, there are around 1.5 million words in English, and more words are being added to the English language at a rate of about 14.7 new words every day. So how does that make you feel when you hear that? That's a lot of words, isn't it? In fact, it's an enormous number of words, and maybe you feel a little like this little girl here. It's just too much for you to carry. You can't deal with that number of words. So you need to think about which words are the most useful words for you to learn. Because obviously we cannot manage to learn 1.5 million words. Even native speakers of English don't know 1.5 million words. And maybe you're feeling a little bit like this guy. Oh, too many words, but you don't have to try and learn that many words. Studies show that most native English speakers only know about 20,000 words. Well, that's still quite a lot, isn't it? And well-educated, university-educated people know about 40,000 words. So that's, even that is a lot of words. However, most native speakers of English only use around 5,000 general words every day in everyday speaking, listening, reading, and writing. So that's getting to a more manageable level, isn't it? 5,000 words. I might be able to reach that. Okay, we call these words, these everyday words, high frequency general words. High frequency meaning they're very common. We meet them a lot. And then if you are a university student, studies show that there are around 600 academic words or university level words in English that you need to know. So this is looking a little bit more achievable. these words, these high frequency words, these general high frequency words, these high frequency academic or university level words, these are the most important words that you need to know. And so those are the words you should be learning first before you learn other words. In fact, here's some information that might help you see how to achieve this. If you learn around 5 new general English words every day, that's 35 words a week, that's 1,820 a year. In 3 years, you will know over 5,000 general English words. Okay, so you will be able to understand and take part in everyday English communication, whether that's speaking, reading, listening, or writing. So, as I said, that's about the same number that is used by native speakers of English in everyday communication. Now let's think about mixing up general English words and academic words. We call these AWL, or academic word list words. If you learn 3 general English words and 2 academic words every day, new words, again 35 words a week, 1,800 or a little more per year, in 3 years you will know around 3,000 general words and all the academic words that you need for university study, the key words, that is. Not the special words, but the key academic words. So the good news is that you already know a lot of these general English words and some of the academic words, I'm sure. So the fact is, the truth is that after 3 years, the true size of your total vocabulary knowledge will be much bigger than this. Okay, so that's actually quite good news for you. If you are diligent, if you work hard, and if you learn 5 words per day, your vocabulary knowledge will be much bigger than the basic 5,000 words that you need. So you can do it. That's the first message I have for you. Okay, you don't need to be put off or afraid of that 1.5 million words that I talked about to begin with. You can aim for something that you really can achieve. And the decision, I guess, is up to you. If you say, I can and I will, if you give yourself that goal, that aim, then maybe you will work towards that. So that was the what should we be learning. The next thing I want to talk about is why. Why should we be learning these words in particular? Well, these high frequency words are important because they're the most common words used in English in all situations. In everyday life and in academic or university life. And here's a secret. Native English speakers who study at university also need to learn the academic word list words. In fact, anyone who is studying subjects in English at university must know the academic words to succeed. So you're not alone. Just because English is not your first language, it doesn't mean that you are a step behind, really. Other people who have English as their native language also have to learn these academic words for university study. So here is your goal, really. If you know the first 2,000 general service list, or the general English words, plus 600 or so academic word list words, you will be able to read and understand around 87% of what you read in English at university in any subject. Doesn't matter if it is history, biology, economics, management, all subjects use these common academic words. And if you know at least 80% of the first 2,000 high frequency general words, that's when you're ready to start learning the academic words. And I would guess if you're in your first or second year at university, you probably know around 80%, or you're close to knowing around 80% of the first 2,000 common general English words. So if that's the case, you can start learning the words from the academic word list. So you're probably asking this question as I'm speaking: where can I find these words? It's all very well to tell you you need to learn these words, but where are they? And this is where you might want to take a screenshot. Okay, so the GSL, or the General English Words, can be found at this website. They were created by a person called Michael West in 1953. And it's interesting because Michael West had strong contact and connections with Bangladesh. He lived in Bangladesh for quite a long time. And he created the first list of common English words. And it's still a valuable, useful list. And I use this list even today. Of course, because it was created in 1953, there are new words that have come into the list. And you can find some of these in the first list of the new general words, which are available at this website. So when you click on this website, find this information, go to new GSL lists and go to this link here, follow this link here. So again, you might want to screenshot or copy that. And then as for the academic words, you can find those words at this website here. Okay, so go to the NAWL in alphabetical order. So that information tells you where to go once you go to this website. So I'll just leave that there for a moment to give people time to copy that or photograph that or make a note of that. I'm just pausing at this point to allow people time to record that. If you miss it, you can contact Sirajum afterwards, Sirajum Munira, who has a copy of this PowerPoint, and she can give you this slide information as well. Okay, so these are the websites where you can find the most common words in general English everyday use and in academic or university life. The next question you might be asking is, what about the words that are not on these lists? Well, other words, learning other words really depends on your current level of English ability and the subjects that you are studying. And we call these other words off-list words. And it's most useful to learn these words after you have studied the academic word list and you know most of those words. Or if you are studying your classes in English at university, you will meet those words as you study. Your teachers will use them a lot. The special terms, the special words that belong to each subject area, you will meet them. So for example, if you're studying biology or economics, you will meet words like photosynthesis or autarky, for example. These are not high frequency words, but they are important for the subjects that you are studying. And we call these discipline specific or specialized words or just technical words. And you only need to learn those as you meet them and as you need them, just like native speakers of English do, right? So I wouldn't spend a lot of time learning words like this until you really need to know them. Focus on learning the general words and the academic word list words first. So you'll gradually learn those special subject discipline words as you complete your higher level studies in various content areas, because your professors will use them and explain them to you, and you'll meet them in your course readings. And you should make a special note or a list or a section in your vocabulary records to put those special words. Okay, the other thing I wanted to say about the academic word list, the academic words are also important for your life after university. If you have to use English in the business world or in your workplace or in a situation where you need to communicate across countries, or if you are entering into higher learning, research and so on, whatever your career pathway is. So they are important for you. Okay, let's move on. We've talked about what and why, and now I'd like to talk about some strategies or ways of learning and some activities you can do to help you learn. So one of the first things I'd like to say about ways of learning vocabulary is quite important. When you learn several new words at the same time, it's important to make sure that they are different from each other in their meaning, in their spelling, and in their sound. So if you look at these three words here, you can see they're quite different. An apple is a fruit, a bicycle is something you ride, and danger is a situation that you do not want to be in, right? So they're quite different in meaning, the spelling is quite different, and the sound of these words is quite different. And it's important not to try to learn two or more new words at the same time if they are similar in any way. If the theme or the meaning of the word or the spelling or the sound is similar, research tells us that this confuses our brain. And I can give an example from Japanese, from my own learning, which may not relate very well to Bangladesh, but you might be able to see what I'm trying to say here. There are two verbs, doing words in Japanese. One is tsukuru and another one is tsukau. And you can hear the tsu and the k and the u. They sound very similar. Okay, and one of those verbs means to make and the other one means to do. And when I first started learning Japanese, I tried to learn these two words at the same time. And that was in 2009. And today it is 2020, and I still mix up these two words when I use them in Japanese. My Japanese is not that wonderful, but to me, this is a good example of trying to learn two words that are similar at the same time and really not learning them at all, or not learning them properly, not learning them well. So don't try and learn words that are similar in meaning. So apple, banana, and orange, they're all fruit. And danger, stranger, ranger, they sound very similar and the spelling is similar. Same with bicycle, recycle, cyclical. Okay, so we say, research tells us this is not a good thing for us to do. Make sure the new words that you learn are different. And many of you, especially teachers, might be saying, but this is really different from what textbooks do. And you're quite right. Textbooks often give us chapters that are related to a theme. So you might have a chapter on transport in your textbook. and you'll learn bus, motorbike, car, taxi, truck, all at the same time. And, you know, I think textbook writers put these words together because it seems sensible to arrange them that way. But really, studies show us that students don't learn well when we combine meanings and spelling and sound together. So I'd like to recommend that you try something different by not doing that anymore. Okay, so more strategies and activities. As I said, aim to learn about 5 to 7 new words every day from the lists, depending on your level of ability. Most students at university who are learning English will be studying the first 2,000 to 3,000 general English words and words from the academic word list. If you're not sure of your level, here's another website to go to. You can test yourself and you can find out how many words you know and where you should start putting your energy, where you should start learning. So again, take a screenshot of this if you're interested. When you know a word already, you should then learn another member of the same word family. So if the word on the word list is a noun and you know it well, then you should learn the adjective or the adverb or the verb. But don't try and do that at the same time if the word is new to you. Again, focus on the most common form of the word first. And it's important to review your words often and to have a system or a pattern or a habit to help you do this. And over time, you should space out your review times. So in the beginning, you should review often, and then as time goes by, you can space out your review times. But the key is repeat, 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 okay? And as we say in English, use it. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. So before the end of your second year of university studies, it should be your goal to learn all those words from the academic word list. I wonder how close you are. Vocabulary is the key to learning another language. In fact, studies tell us that vocabulary knowledge accounts for around 71% of your ability in another language. And people who study vocabulary tell us that around 25% of our learning time should be given to vocabulary learning, because vocabulary knowledge drives other language learning. And without vocabulary, you can't say anything, even if you know a lot about grammar. So I would say focus more on learning vocabulary. You can say more, even if the grammar's incorrect at times, you can still communicate an idea. And these are some usual or common activities that teachers give students. Things like games and drills and puzzles, filling in a blank. I'm not going to go through all of these, but as you look at these, I think you'll see examples of activities you have done in the past to try and help you remember vocabulary. And I want to say to you, well, these are okay. They're useful to some degree, but they're more useful for review, not so useful for learning. But actually, it's not what you do so much as doing the work frequently, doing it often. Okay, so anything that you can do to help you learn those key high frequency common words, anything is useful, but some things are more useful than others. And I'd like to focus on what I think are more useful ways of actually learning vocabulary. And the reason for that is many of the activities I just showed you, they are classroom activities, but they're not really things that people do in the real world when they use words. So you might be asking, why on earth am I doing these things in class then? Or why am I doing these things for homework? These are very mechanical, repetitive activities, and they don't really have a strong purpose in the sense of communication. They're often a little bit boring, and because they're a bit boring, sometimes students don't feel like doing them. They don't feel motivated, and they're asking themselves, why on earth am I doing this? You know, it's a wonderful day outside. Why should I be filling the gaps or completing a puzzle or doing a word find? So many vocabulary learning tasks fail to get learners to think deeply about the words. So deep processing is really important. Students have to have a genuine, real need to know a word and to use it. And if they don't feel a need, they're not really going to learn it. And many of these tasks or activities don't require students to use language in a creative or original way. Okay, so they're a bit dull, and they're not really getting you to think deeply. And thirdly, a lot of these activities do not put the vocabulary into a rich context, a meaningful context. That's studied in isolation. And they really need to be put into a context or into a situation. So just as these people here are looking at what is an elephant, they're only looking at one part, aren't they? So they're going to go away not really understanding what an elephant is. They're only going to think about the small part that they could see. And so it is with words. If we don't use them, if we don't think about them deeply, and if we don't put them into a real situation, we fail to really understand and learn them well. So why is this important? Well, research tells us that processing or studying something deeply affects our long-term learning. We're more likely to remember things for a long time if we really need to know the word, if we have to search for the meaning, and if we have to make decisions about whether those words should be used in the way we want to use them or not. So in the beginning, when we first meet a word, yes, we do need to think about the spelling and the pronunciation and the meaning. That's important. But we quickly need to move past that and focus on how to use that word or use that language as much as possible. And we should be trying to put that word to work for us in many different situations so that our knowledge of that word becomes automatic. So it's really important for teachers and for students themselves to look for ways to use new vocabulary in a creative, original way, because really, when you think about it, that's what we're aiming to do. We're aiming to be able to use English in ways that we want to use English in the future, in original ways, in our own ways. So effectively, we need to make the best use of our learning time by using strategies or methods that provide lasting results, not just practice activities, not just review activities. As important as they are, we need to go beyond that. So we need to ask ourselves, a key question. What does it really mean to know a word? How do you know that you know a word? Well, yes, we talked about form. Form covers the spelling, the stress, where do you put the strong part of the word, the pronunciation of the different sounds within a word, other words in the same family. We need to know the meaning. Can we recognize it when we meet it, when we read or listen? And can we use it? And the last one is what I'd like you to really think about. Can we pull it out of our brain? Can we retrieve it and use it in the right way when we need to? And we call this active knowledge, okay? Because it involves production or using the word. And also with that comes other things like using idioms and word patterns or collocations. The key, therefore, in using is, can we do this? Can we use a word easily and with flexibility? Can we manipulate or shape that word and change it to fit our own sentences? And here's a young Bangladeshi student who helped me last year using English in a very interesting discussion with a THT member. He was having an ordinary everyday conversation with her, but he was using the language, using his vocabulary knowledge freely and in a very original way. And that's what we're aiming for. So often as language learners in a non-native English speaking setting, we give most of our attention to the form and the meaning of words and not enough attention to use. And it is difficult if you don't have people to practice speaking English with. So let's talk now about some activities we can use. We don't want to be like this cat who's looking at the guitar and thinking, well, yes, I can see the shape of it and I know it makes sound, but I can't play it, right? So that's what we don't want to be like the cat when we're using language. We don't want to just know the form and the meaning of the word. We also want to be able to use the word and get some pleasure from our use, just as we would get pleasure from playing music. So here's the first activity I'd like to explain to you. The first activity is a pair activity. Students each have a word list, and the words come from those common English language lists that I mentioned. And they come also from a reading text that has been studied in the past. So the students have completed a reading, and then afterwards they have the words from the reading that they are trying to learn, and person A retells the information in their own words using as many words as possible, and person B checks off the words as they are used and then gives feedback when the first person has finished. And of course, in this activity, any form of the word may be used, and words can be used more than once. And students can look at the reading, but they shouldn't just read directly from it. So that's one activity. A second activity is very similar. So you would switch pairs and repeat it, but this time, when you work in pairs, they use the same word list. Instead of repeating the information from the reading, the person can talk about something that relates to the theme of the reading, or give their opinions about the reading, or talk about their personal experiences using their own original sentences. And student B again checks off the words, and they switch and repeat when they have finished. This is more challenging, and it requires deeper processing, more original language, and a stronger ability to use the words in a suitable context. Okay, these can be practiced outside class time too, so you don't have to wait for your teacher to tell you to do this. These two activities can also become writing activities. So after studying a reading text and reviewing the list of words, students can retell the information and put a circle around the words that they have used. Or they can write a set number of words about a topic that the teacher gives them, relating to the reading in some way. Or they can write on a free choice topic using the list words again. And I always suggest that students spend 3 to 5 minutes thinking and preparing before they do this task. And don't take too long, write as much as you can within 10 to 15 minutes. And then count up how many list words you used and the total number of words you used. And each time you do the activity, try to use more target words. And again, you can practice this on your own. It's very important to share and discuss your writing as well. So exchange your work with each other, read what your partners write. And I think writing should always have a real audience, not just the teacher. And students should take some time commenting to each other and asking questions in English, both on the content and on the vocabulary and the way it was used. And as they comment and speak, they can use the vocabulary again using original sentences. And there's other things you can do. You can share your writing to a whole class or in an English club, or you can create documents online using Google Docs, for example, and share your writing that way and comments about it. So teachers, you can collect work, but if your focus is vocabulary, it's important not to correct every error. Just focus on checking the way the target vocabulary is used, okay? And then writers will notice that and focus on the vocabulary more. If you want to focus on grammar, you can do that through other activities. Okay. Let's move on to my third point, taking it further. Building an English identity and long-term vocabulary knowledge through personal stories. Let's quickly think about language first. Language is not just a tool or a goal or a means to a career. Language is not just words. Language is a way of telling people who we are. It relates to our family, our culture, everything about us. Okay, so language and our identity are very close and connected. So here's a challenge for you. If language is identity, then who am I in English? People often say when they learn another language, they feel as though they have a different personality. So who do you want to be when you are speaking English? What is your identity when you are using English? Who are you? And of course, big question, what on earth do these questions have to do with using vocabulary? Well, let's think, what is identity? Identity is how we understand our relationship to the world and how we understand possibilities for the future across space and time. And how do we create our identity? We do that through stories. It's a means of defining ourselves. And the stories that we tell about ourselves change throughout our lives. And they help us to understand who we are. So expressing your identity in English and building vocabulary knowledge can be done together. If long-term vocabulary learning comes from processing vocabulary in a deep way, using it in an original way, in a meaningful context, then writing and telling stories in English about the things I do, the things I know, the things I have experienced, this will help me to do all of these things, to build my vocabulary knowledge and build a clearer picture of who I am in English. So 3 things you can do to put today's learning to work for you. One thing is to write journals. Describe your daily activities, events, thoughts, impressions, and use the vocabulary you're learning in your writing. Go back and check it over time to notice your progress. Secondly, read the stories of others, and this website, X Reading, is a very useful website for reading graded material. Teachers might like to ask their schools if they can support having X Reading in the classroom. I use this a lot with my lower level students for reading for pleasure, which Dr. Bartholomew talked about in his previous talk. And thirdly, write and share short stories that you have written yourself, both fiction, not true, and non-fiction, true. Okay, talk about your life in Bangladesh, your experiences, your thoughts, imaginary events, anything, and use the vocabulary you're learning in your writing. And here's a newsflash. If you choose to do that, and I hope many of you do, you can send me your stories, and if we like your stories, we can put them on our website for other people in Bangladesh to use. Our website has stories written by Bangladeshi people, not just teachers, but also students. Our youngest person is a 10-year-old girl who has written poetry, and her work is up there. So your work could be used in our project. So stories about ourselves, as Tanzia mentioned at the beginning, is a project for students and teachers of English in Bangladesh to create good quality graded stories and reading materials for each other to use. Stories that talk about Bangladesh, and you can access this material by going to the Belter website and clicking on the link there. So each story is written by a team member who sends it to me. I grade it, I correct the grammar if necessary, I check to see how difficult it is. There is no payment, there are no fees. You do not have to write perfect English, and I would work with you to make the story ready for publication. And we use high frequency or common word lists to make sure that readers learn the words they really need to know, and the stories reflect the identity of people in Bangladesh. And if you're a teacher or a university person, your story can count as an official publication for your CV. So here are a few examples of stories by people that we have accepted. And here is one of our young students from East West University who has submitted stories to us. And this is just an example of the beginning of one of her stories. This is a pre-intermediate to intermediate level story. So if you'd like to build your knowledge of English vocabulary and explore your identity in English and contribute, please send me an email message and I can send you more information. Remember, everyone has stories to tell, and your stories are important. I'm sure each of these people have a story that we could hear from them, if only they would tell it. So you can email me at this address and put stories about ourselves into the subject line of your email. And these are a few references, and maybe we won't have time to think about this, but think about these things for yourself. What did you learn? What new thing are you going to do? Or what are you going to do differently after today's presentation? And what questions or comments do you have? And I have now finished, so I will stop sharing my screen. And thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, it was such a lovely and informative discussion, Professor Cherry Brown. Thank you so much. So Professor Brown has clarified some of our misconceptions regarding language and vocabulary learning, and as you can hear, It's not like we need to study 500,000 words. Instead, we should target the high frequency words or the common words. She also shared statistical information as well as a number of resources where we can find these high frequency words that are relevant to us and what techniques we can use to learn these high frequency words. And I'm sure that you will be very excited to send your stories to the project Professor Brown has recently pointed out. Now we are going to have a very short question answer session. I would like to request our guests and participants to please drop your questions in the chat box and send them to me. I have already received a number of questions from the chat box, and I'm going to read it out to Professor Cherry Brown. So Professor Brown, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So the first question is from Angelica, and she's saying that how can I understand which vocabulary I should select in a particular context, as there are various synonyms? It's her question.
If you are referring to reading, you can go to the lists of words that I have talked about, the general lists and the academic words. And what I would do is circle the words you don't know and then look to see if those words are on the list. And then if you find that some of the words are similar in meaning, just choose one of them to learn. You can always come back and look at them later and learn another one if they are similar in meaning. But choose maybe 5 or 7 each day and make sure that they are a little different from each other. So as you're reading something, circle it and check to see if it's on those lists, the general service word list or the academic word list. If it's not on the list and you have to search for it and you can't find it, then it's probably not a high frequency word. So I would put that further down your list of things to learn. Learn the words that are more common before you learn uncommon words.
Our next question is from Mona Lisa Nawaz, and she's asking how to count the vocabulary that a foreign language learner possesses in the target language.
Oh, that's a wonderful question because researchers argue about this all the time. It's very difficult. First of all, you have to have agreement about what is a word. Is it just one word or is it the whole word family? But the website I showed you earlier, it's a reasonably good measure to give you some idea of how many words you know. So you can go to that website that I showed you earlier and there's a little test there and that will give you an idea of roughly how many words you may know in English. If you can't remember that, you can just Google word size or vocabulary size, how to find out or how to discover your vocabulary size in English, and you'll get a number of different websites which give tests, little tests, quick tests. They take about 10 minutes, which will give you a general idea of how big your vocabulary knowledge is.
Okay. Next one is rather a comment rather than a question. It's from Mahbub Alam Batan, and he has sent it to everybody. Many thanks to Mark Bartholomew sir and Cherry Brown ma'am for giving us some time and for explaining how we can do well in English, as well as thanking our Honorable Tanzia Mubarak ma'am for organizing such a beautiful and instructive program for us. Yes.
Thank you. That's a very kind comment. Much appreciated.
Okay. Now let's move on to the next question. It's from Najmul Haq, and he's saying that most of the poems, novels, and dramas which we study in our classes are very difficult to understand as they contain plenty of unfamiliar words. we can't get these literary items. Can't we understand them in the context of our country? I mean, he is saying that he is having difficulty with the literature or literary texts that he is studying.
Yes, Dr. Bartholomew talked about this last week in his talk. And I think it's important for teachers and students both to be clear about different kinds of reading. There's generally two different kinds of reading. One is called intensive reading, where you really dig deep into the reading and you try to understand everything and every word. And the other is extensive reading, or reading for pleasure. And reading for pleasure is important because over time, if you read at the right level for yourself, something that is maybe a little easy for you, you will meet common words and your knowledge of English will grow. I think teachers really need to think hard about the kind of material they are giving to students, because if the texts are too difficult, students are really not going to learn well. But if you're in that situation as a student, of course you have to study what your teacher tells you to study, but at the same time I would go through the reading, circle the words I don't know, compare them with the words on the high frequency word lists, and make a point of learning the more common words. Those are really, really important. Studies tell us that if we don't understand at least 97% of something that we are reading, we cannot work out the words meaning, an unknown word's meaning from the context. So it's very important to have a balance between reading what we do understand often and enjoying it, and intensive reading where we have to study something that's a little more difficult. My students are in the same position. They often have to read difficult material, and I ask them to make their own word lists and to choose words from the reading which are also on the academic word list. And they submit those lists to me, and they do some word studies on those words. And also the other side to that is make sure you discuss those readings with other students, because often in group discussions, when you're really talking through what does this mean, your understanding of those texts will grow. Don't try and do it all by yourself.
Okay. The next question is really kind of situation. Muhammad Yasin Arafat is saying, most of the time when I'm watching an English movie, I keep a notepad with me so that I can note the unfamiliar words and I later study them. But problem is that the words I study, I can't remember them for long, and particularly when I'm speaking. So can you suggest me what I can do in this situation?
Yes, well, it is great to watch movies. I enjoy watching movies in other languages and reading the subtitles. Two things. Those movies often use very informal language, so be careful about the words that you choose to learn. Again, make sure that they're really common English words. But the key to remembering them is using them often. So after you have written your list in your notes, try and maybe write a story or summarize the movie for yourself and use as many words as you can and review those words often. There's no magic way of remembering. It's really just repeated meeting of the word and frequent review and using the words often. Some experts disagree about how many times we need to meet a word before it will stay in our memory. Some people say at least 7, other people say more than 20 times. So don't give up, but keep reviewing, keep using those words, and eventually the more you meet them, the more you use them, the more likely you will be to remember them. I wish I could give you a magic pill and it would help you to remember things easily. It is difficult, but putting those words into a real context, real sentences, that will help you as well.
Okay. I'm afraid that it was the last questions that we could attend to. As you know, we have time constraints, and thank you so much, our lovely students and participants, for sharing your questions. I have a lot of questions in my chat box, but I cannot read them out right now. Hopefully you can get in touch with Professor Brown later on, because this is not the end, this is only the beginning. So I'm going to move on to the next segment. Let me just point out that our Honorable Pro-Vice Chancellor Sir has also joined us, and he will talk to us very shortly. At present, I'm very pleased to note that Dr. Mark Bartholomew, with whom we had an exciting webinar last Wednesday, has also joined us in this webinar. And yes, it was a lovely experience back then and right now as well. We are very privileged that he has made the time to join us in this webinar as well. So now I would like to request Dr. Mark Bartholomew to please say a few words on this occasion. Dr. Mark, are you with me? Yes, he's there. Dr. Mark, can you hear my voice?
You have unmuted me.
Yes.
Yes.
It's happening today a lot, isn't it?
Yes. I was just writing to you. Thank you so much, Cherry. I mean, that was really, really interesting. And we are already in email contact, and I would love a copy, please, of your PowerPoint presentations. There are all sorts of websites that I did not know about, and what you have said about prioritizing particular words and how to do that conforms to my own experience. Now, as you know, I'm interested in extensive reading, in reading for pleasure. I would like to add something to what Professor Brown has said, and it's this. The best language learners cope with uncertainty.
Yes.
If you recall at the beginning of what Professor Brown was saying, she said, you know, there are 1.5 million words now in English. Every time the Oxford English Dictionary tries to make a new edition, it takes them 75 years. And by the time they get to the end, they're ready to start a new edition. It is, of course, impossible to keep up with everything that's going on in English. But also, it's unimportant because today is my 60th birthday, and I read a lot, okay? And still, with a PhD, with all my years in university, with all the books I read, I come across new words quite often in English. And do I look them up? Actually, yes. But the point is, like you, I forget what they mean. And that's not important because I understand the message that the writer is trying to give me. Yeah. So, of course, we need vocabulary. Last week, Professor Brown said it's words, not grammar, that we need to communicate even at a basic level. Yeah. And the more words we have, the better we can communicate, the more precise we can be. But more important even than all of those new words is the confidence to take part and to communicate when you don't know some of the words, because there are always going to be words you don't know. Yeah. And I would suggest that in Bangladesh, it's confidence which stops so many of us speaking. Yeah? Not grammar, not vocabulary, just that we feel shy and we feel stupid. Don't worry about it. Say what you want to say. If it isn't in perfect, fluent English, who cares? Because imperfect English is what most people speak. And imperfect English is better than no English. Thank you very, very much, Professor Brown. I truly enjoyed it, and I'm sure we can be in touch. One final point. I want to plug Professor Brown's website in liaison with the Bangladesh English Language Teachers Association, BELTA. I have now read 7 or 8 of the stories and none of the poems. I'm not really interested in poetry, but I have read 7 or 8 of the stories, and 5 or 6 of them I really liked. Please, please, please. And they're all graded for you. Pre-intermediate, upper intermediate. Yeah, and you can choose whatever you want. Go on there and read, have a go, and that will help you to learn. Thank you very much, Professor Brown. Thank you once again, Tanzia, for an extremely well-organized webinar. Thank you very much to Green University for organizing it. Nice to see you all again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mark Bartholomew, for your wonderful appreciation and lovely talk. And I'm really delighted to point out that our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Dr. Muhammad Ghulam Samdani Fakir, the chief guest of our webinar today, has also joined us. And I already pointed out that our Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Dr. Muhammad Abdul Razak, who is also our special guest for this event, has also joined us. So right now, I'm going to invite our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, to please say something on this occasion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tanzia, for your nice introduction. And I'm really sorry to join this session a bit late due to another engagement in a business meeting. But last 10-15 minutes, I was listening the advices given by Professor Cherry Brown and Dr. Ma. Really, it is very much helpful for our students. And we all know that a person with rich vocabulary will have much flexibility in expressing his or her writing and speaking communication. And definitely the ways and means of increasing the vocabulary have been well explored in this session, and definitely uh, vocabulary can make someone's writing capacity powerful and effective of what someone is trying to mean exactly, and that is really very much helpful. One thing is important: we often be introduced with the new words, but we shortly forget about those words. Why? The reason is we are very much reluctant on keeping using those new words. If we learn the words from different sources and plan to use them in our communication, both in written and speaking, then I believe it will be rather difficult to forget. So, use of new words is very much important to enrich the vocabulary. And the other many ideas have been shared. I don't want to repeat all those things, and this is at the end of the uh, seminar time. I really appreciate Center for Language, uh, especially Tanzia and Shirajul Munira for organizing such effective webinar on timely topic, and definitely would like to pay special thanks to today's speaker, Professor Jerry Brown. Thank you very much for your endeavors, your valuable time for the students of the University of Bangladesh. Thank you very much to all the students as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Your speeches are always very informative and always encourage us to do even better. Thank you so much, sir. Now it is the time to invite our chief guest for this webinar, Professor Dr. Muhammad Ghulam Samdani Fakir, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Green University of Bangladesh, to kindly provide his concluding remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tanzia. At the very outset, I would like to seek apology for not being able to join with you at the very beginning. As our Pro Vice Chancellor was mentioned, both of us were basically engaged with another meeting. So, but I don't like to miss you. That's why I said that I will be at the later end part of it, I must join. So from my side, thank you very much, Professor Brown, for making your time and join with us for really making wonderful presentation. Although I missed it, but I realized from the presence of so many colleagues and students listening to you, it emphasized that how much impact that you already made with us. Thank you, many, many, many thanks to you for joining. At the same time, I would like to take the privilege to thanks Dr. Mark to join with us. I was listening your last comments about the vocabulary. I really appreciated your presence here. One information that I'd like to share with all of you, I was in Romania and I had to learn Romanian language. So the struggle that I had, I would like to share a few of them. One of the struggling, my professor used to advise me that Samdani, you should have living dictionary. And then I asked my professor that, what do you really mean by living dictionary? And then she suggested that, well, you must always friendship with Romanian who doesn't speak English. That will really help you to develop your communication faster. But if you switch over in English and communicate with others, this will not help you to learn, Romanian faster. Here we realized, in Bangladesh context, as you know, the 99% of Bangladeshi, we are speaking in Bangla. And as a result, we always feel comfort to switch over. Whenever we get opportunity, we switch over in Bangla. And that's why the communication become really difficult of that. And my professor also suggested me that, well, in order to really learn new words, vocabulary, it was also indicated our provisy that, well, you must use this word several times in communicating, in writing, then these words will be used. Just listening will not really help you. I'm sure that you might have suggested many suggestions in strategic ways of acquiring new words and using this. So this, on my side, that, well, I still remember some of the words. At a certain point of time, you'll be happy to know that I became very fluent in Romanian, but at the cost of my English. But later part, when I am not, conversing in English, when I came back in Romanian language, I lost a lot of, fluency in Romanian language. But what I believe, whenever I find a Romanian person, if they speak, it revives, and I can really continue this. So thank you once again for being with us, and I hope this is the beginning. We'll have much more interaction in coming days also. And I really appreciate our Language Center for organizing this wonderful event. And I'm really impressed seeing so many faculty members and students are engaging in this workshop. Dr. Mark, thank you very much for joining with us. And I hope both of you are really making something for us. It's a value-adding for us. Brown, I really enjoy your smiling face. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you so much, sir. You always inspire us, as always, through your speech, and there's always something new to learn from you. So before I end, let me just thank our honorable guests, Professor Cherry Brown and Dr. Mark Bartholomew, for giving us the time, for helping our students as well as the teachers to learn about language vocabulary, and also in the previous webinar where Mark joined, we learned about reading skills as well. So both of you, I'm really thankful on behalf of my university. I'm also very grateful to our honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, our Pro-Vice Chancellor, sir, for the relentless support they have provided to us. We are grateful to our university, and also the Language Center team that we have had also worked very hard for this webinar. So I hope you had a wonderful time. Thank you so much, Dan, and perhaps see you in another webinar. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, sir, for joining at the last moment. So we enjoyed a lot. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks to our Honorable Pro-Vice Chancellor as well. Okay, dear students, this is the end of the session. You can leave. So thank you, Cherry Brown. So it was so much informative. And we are looking forward to having another session on 17th September. So hopefully we will be able to successfully organize this session as well.
Thank you so much. I didn't want to rush away in a hurry in case you wanted to say anything else, but I do appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone today. How many people did we have in total? Do you have any idea?
So it was 183 last time, what I have seen. So Tanzia, have you seen? So what
was around 200, as 200, you pointed
yes.
out. Yes, around
190 or about yes. 200. It was like
yes,
that.
About 200.
Even when I joined, I found 164 participants were there.
Okay.
So that shows that you really made a great impact through your speaking, you know.
Well, I hope that students in particular were able to understand that I didn't speak too fast or that the level of language was not too difficult, but I was aware of trying to speak to both students and teachers. So I hope there was something useful there for both groups of people.
Yes, it was exciting because I also got a number of resources from you as well. So yes, as a teacher, I didn't know about these things. So yes, it was exciting for me as well as a faculty member.
I'm glad because to be honest, when I didn't learn about high frequency words until I reached my master's level study, and I was surprised that nobody had taught me about high frequency words before that. And I was already teaching and studying at the same time, and it really revolutionized my teaching because at last I was able to be sure that the words I was asking my students to learn were the ones that they really needed to know. So it's had a profound impact on my own teaching, knowing about these things, and that's why I'm very happy to share, because it is important information.
So it was really interesting as the high frequency word. So we knew about it, but we do not have the list of those high frequency words. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor always mentioned how many numbers of word a speaker should know to speak in English, but we don't have the list. So today you have given us the link of the website where we can get the high frequency word. So it was really excellent.
In fact, if you go to the University of Victoria, University of Wellington, Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand, they have a wonderful website, Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. They have a wonderful, wonderful resource website all about vocabulary. And so you can learn a lot about vocabulary learning and teaching just by exploring that website. I was fortunate in my master's study to enroll at Victoria University and to have as my teacher Paul Nation, who was a world expert on vocabulary acquisition. And he's a very practical man. He became a professor, but he came up through the ranks as a teacher. And he really is very knowledgeable about vocabulary teaching and learning and extensive reading as well. And the university website that he has created has a lot of resources, which people, it's free to use, you know, you can just go there and you can learn so much. So I really recommend that website to teachers in particular. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Cherry Brown. So I think now we can close up, I think.
Yes.
What do you say?
I'll go.
Yes.
Okay.
Getting
No,
late
it was
here.
so exciting. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, see you again, Cherry.
I'll see
Thank
you
you
again
so
soon.
much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.